Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Joe Zeiker, and I'm your host tonight for the program Bring the World Home. We have a special guest, Colin McCarroll, who is going to be with us tonight. We're going to be talking. The program's about the Peace Corps, but the program's about a lot more, too. If you're interested in food, the program's about food in exotic countries. If you're interested in geography, the program's about geography. We're going to be talking about a very exciting country. If you're interested in travel, don't worry. We're going to talk about travel to some pretty exotic places. If you're interested in foreign affairs, we're going to be talking about foreign affairs. And if you're interested in a possible different way to promote democracy in this kind of world of rather bombastic actions, we're going to be talking about that too. So we have a special guest, and Colin's going to tell us about where he was in the Peace Corps. I want to give you a couple of clues for a minute. It's one of the few countries in South America where its citizens have never played in the National Basketball Association that I know of, possibly because they're rather minute stature. And it's landlocked, so that kind of gives you three countries now to choose from. It's either Uruguay, Paraguay, or the country he was actually in, which was?
Bolivia.
Bolivia. And Colin, tell me what years were you in Bolivia?
I was in Bolivia from the beginning of the year 2000, like January, until July of 2002.
How old were you when you went into the country?
I was 23.
23. Had you been in college by that time?
Yeah, I'd recently graduated from college with a chemistry degree.
And a chemistry degree, okay. In a minute we'll talk whether you used your chemistry degree at all, because frequently Peace Corps volunteers get sent to places to do things that are kind of unlike what they've been trained for, but they succeed spectacularly. Could you start out by giving all of us a description of the nation of Bolivia, and geographically, let's talk first.
Like you were saying, Bolivia is a landlocked country in South America. The western portion of the country is in the Andes, so it's at a very high altitude, and then it goes down in the northern area here is the Brazilian basin. It's the Amazon basin. So you get down to closer to sea level, like 300 feet above.
The Andes area, there's not a lot of villages and towns in that section. Am I correct about that?
It's sparsely populated in the higher altitudes, and Bolivia isn't a very populous country, but especially in the higher altitudes, less people. Uh-huh. Besides in the city of La Paz.
And tell me about La Paz. I was there once many years ago, and it was kind of a dramatic contrast from the areas right outside of La Paz to the actual area of La Paz. Can you describe for our listeners what La Paz, the capital city, is like today?
Whenever I think of going to La Paz, I used to come over from the eastern side of the country taking a bus. I think about the highway that was up over the Altiplano, and which is, like you're saying, it's a flat area, which just nothing out there but grass and mountains, a cold area. And when you get to La Paz, you come in on this road, and it starts to be a little bit more populated, and then you can see it's just one level houses. It's a very poor area of La Paz called El Alto, and then
is that above the city?
It's above the city.
Okay.
It's above the city, and then you just come up to the edge, and the road kind of goes down, and you just get to this overlook where you can see the entire. It's a valley that runs down. It's like a basin that kind of stretches out, and it's just millions of people down there. I'm not sure how many, but it seems like a very populous area.
Is it a vibrant city?
Well, when I was there, it wasn't really green that I can remember anymore. Maybe things have changed. It's just a very populated city. It's a vibrant city, I'd say. I didn't spend a whole lot of time there, but there was a lot of things going on. It was, probably the most fun, the better city to be in Bolivia. Actually, Santa Cruz, which is farther down, closer to the Amazon, is a nice city also.
Mm-hmm. Where is Cochabamba?
Cochabamba is.
Where is that located?
It's in the middle of the central area of Bolivia.
Is it high? Is it low?
I think it's kind of in the middle range, like we were saying. It's called the City of Eternal Spring. It's
quite a nice place.
Yeah, it's a nice place.
So you graduate from college. You've got a chemistry degree, and when did you start thinking about possibly going into the Peace Corps?
I'm not sure. Somebody actually made a reference to some Saturday morning advertisements that there may have been when we were kids, and I kind of remember seeing these things at some point, but I don't know, it just always was something that I wanted to do. While I was growing up, I had the opportunity to learn Spanish, and I always wanted to use that and refine it, and just something that I really wanted to do.
How was your Spanish when you got to the country?
It was fairly strong. I had done some studying abroad and that kind of thing, so I was fairly fluent.
Is Spanish the predominant language compared to some of the Indian dialects?
It's the national language. There are other dialects that come in handy, but for the most part, if you speak Spanish, you're going to be doing just fine.
Now, so you get out of college, and at some point, was there an invitation to join the Peace Corps then? Or did it take a while?
I think I applied for it during my second to last semester at school, and so right when I got out, I had an offer, and I think I graduated in December, and so I think my offer came in October or something like that.
Were you excited to go to Bolivia, or was that
not
one of your choices?
No, it was in my interview. I told the recruiter that I wanted to go somewhere where they spoke Spanish, and she said, well, she said, well, you want to go to Africa? And I said, well, I was thinking that would be a good place to go, but I really wanted to go somewhere where I could, speak in Spanish, seeing as that I already knew the language, and I thought that it would be more useful.
Okay. Now you got to Bolivia, and where did you get assigned? What was your village ultimately after training?
After training, I went to a small community. It was a kind of a agricultural community called San Miguel, and it was in southern Bolivia, in central southern, in the I think they're called territories, a province of Potosi.
Now, when you say southern territories, how far from La Paz are you talking about?
To get to La Paz, I would have to take an overnight train, and then about a 4-hour bus ride.
From your village?
From my village.
Yeah. And when
so
you get
it's
to your
about a 15-hour trip.
When you get to your village, what would we find? What would we see?
How
big?
Just a scattering of houses along a road, fields, and then there was kind of an intermittent river that ran through there, and so sometimes the river, like if you were coming out there, sometimes in the dry season they'd use the river as a road, and then when it was wet season, or if it hadn't been maintained well enough, they would use the road, just depending on which was in better condition. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, what kind of houses do people live in, and what do they do for a living there?
The houses that people lived in were made of adobe blocks, and then they would either have like a corrugated tin roof, or a roof that was constructed out of like hay and mud, and kind of like a cane, like it was similar to bamboo, a bamboo style of cane that grew around there. Floors were primarily dirt floors where I was, and there were a few houses, and that was one of the things that I pushed people to try and do, was to put in concrete floors. And there was a number of families that I worked with on that, where I would supply some of the materials if they provided some of the raw materials. Mm-hmm. That was a great project.
Yeah. Where did you live in this little village?
When I got there, first I lived with a family for a few weeks, and then while I was doing that, they moved me around. I'm not really sure how ready they were for my arrival. There was one volunteer there previous to me.
In your town?
In the community. Okay. And then eventually I worked with the mason to build an additional room at the school out of adobe.
A lot of times these Peace Corps programs, we kind of make it sound like you just bop into town and everyone's ready for you, and you're incredibly successful, and on you go to 2 years of excitement, and you go home. I know from being a Peace Corps volunteer in 1965 in the Dominican Republic, that is not the way it works out. Sometimes you pop into a town and they're expecting you. Other times they're not expecting you, and you're kind of like looking at them and they're looking at you, and everybody's wondering what should be happening. What was it like when you arrived? Did they expect you?
They had been inspecting me because there was the volunteer who was there prior to my group, or prior to me, he became a coordinator and actually was a trainer, and he trained my small group, I think we were about 10 volunteers. And during the training, we went on a technical week, which we went to my community of San Miguel and just worked with the people there. So they were expecting somebody in a few months, or I think it was like maybe a month and a half later, 6 weeks later that I went out there. But it's
Was there a program for you? Was there an agency you were assigned to, or were you pretty much sent into that town and told to try to do what you can to make the world better?
That was pretty much what it was.
Which is not the ideal.
No, it was a unique situation because the volunteer who had been there before me he had been assigned to a counterpart in that area, and I don't think things had worked out very well with his counterpart, and so he actually met up with another guy who was an ergonomic or an agronomist, and somehow met him along the way, and they started to work together and developed a friendship, and he actually was my counterpart, but he had lived in that community while the volunteer previous to me was there, but he no longer lived in the community. He moved to Tupiza, which was a nearby community, a larger town where he had his wife and kids, and his kids were in school.
They talk about in the Peace Corps, and it's really an important principle. If you learn it and have experience with it, I guess you use it throughout your entire life. It's called the tolerance for ambiguity, meaning your ability to go someplace and basically wait and wait and wait and wait while things are uncertain. Were your first days, first months uncertain in this assignment, or did you have things to do?
Well, right when I got there, one of the first things I started doing was building the house, and it was tough at first because there wasn't very much guidance, and I had to work independently, and it was just trying to get out and meet people, get a feel for the town, and how I could help them, what kind of a project I might be able to develop, and that's kind of what in training they tell you to do that, go there, hang out for 6 months, 3 months, meet people, talk to them, try and work on your language skills, work on your communication skills, and learn how to communicate with the people.
Right. Talk about, you and I talked last morning a little bit about nighttime, no lights in your village, I guess kerosene lanterns maybe, no electricity. What did you do at night? What was it like at night when the sun goes down?
Definitely, when the sun goes down, it gets cold, and you're in the mountains, it gets cold, and the lanterns come on, or you light some candles. Living at the school, that was kind of a central hub for where the kids. There was a cancha, of a little football or soccer court. It was a basketball court actually, but they used it to play kind of a futbito, kind of a mini soccer, and so the kids would be there. They would just come over after school or after dinner, and basically just play until it got dark, and then they'd still be hanging out. So if my light was on, they'd come over and I could hang out with them, and we'd talk or play games. I found a Monopoly game where we played cards, different kind of things, played music. We had some flutes, that kind of stuff. Some of the kids were interested in that kind of thing. And
when I was in the Peace Corps, I remember being on duty all the time in one sense. I remember two feelings. One is almost being like the little mini movie star, because you're the only Americano in the area. You're the only different person. You're the only foreigner, and life is pretty boring when you're going to and from work to your little fields every day. So you became kind of like the superstar. But with that, and that was kind of nice, people look at you and you kind of get a little pat on the back and all that. But with that came also the obligation that you're on duty all the time. You're never off duty. Every chance you're with the kids at night, you're trying to sneak in one or two more thoughts about, hey, maybe you should read a little bit, maybe you can do this, maybe someday you guys can work together and create a group and move with community unity. Did you feel that at all, where the way you were setting up your early days?
I think definitely it's being on duty all the time, like you said. There was some times that you need to get out on the weekend or something like that, and I would go to a nearby town and get a hotel room, and just relax, try and get away from it. But you're like you said, you're on duty the entire time.
Talk for a second about these beautiful flip-flops, fancy flip-flops, folks.
These are called.
What are they called?
These are called
what are they made of?
abarcas, and I think they're made out of. It's like a tire. It looks like it's a tire underneath, and then
Yes.
it's a leather strap on the top. And I think that's also leather. But this is the shoe that the people wore for everything. I mean, here you go to a construction site and you see people with steel-toed boots, but in Bolivia you wear
those.
You wear those.
A lot of foot injuries.
Not sure. But actually,
Well, if there is, if there isn't, there should be with
People-
that lack of protection.
yeah, it's interesting to see
yeah.
what people's feet look like
Yeah.
down there.
Let's summarize for a minute. Peace Corps, one of the goals is to go there and to learn. Did that get accomplished in your setting? Did you learn
Yeah, I've learned a lot.
about
Things-
Bolivia?
Yeah, about Bolivia, about just people.
You got to travel throughout South America on
Travel.
vacation? All that's a plus.
That's a
How-
plus. It was a great learning experience.
So that part has been good.
Yeah.
How about the flip side, the idea of you going to another country, not naive and not arrogant, but to try to spend a couple years of your life making the world a little bit better place? Has that matched up?
Well,
Did you accomplish what you wanted?
yeah, it's one of those. It's a trade-off, I think, where you spend your time, while you're young doing things, but yeah.
But you got things accomplished.
Yeah, I felt like I accomplished my goals while I was there. There was a project that I did with the greenhouses, and then another project that was actually in motion when I got out there was with a water system, a potable gravity-fed water system that was for a small portion of the community, about 30 households.
Where'd they get the water before the project was completed?
Before the project was completed, the water was taken from irrigation ditch that was primarily water that had already come from a community farther at a higher altitude, and then was diverted through the irrigation ditches and then came down to that community.
Did you boil your water that you drank, or what did you drink?
Peace Corps provided us with a I think it's like a water filter that had I think they called them candles or a vela. That it wasn't on the inside. Now I think it was kind of like just a carbon filter, something similar to that.
What was going on there for that poster being put up, and what does it mean?
The poster, I took it down off of a wall in Cochabamba. I was during my training. We were in Cochabamba, and there was a lot of talk about they were going to privatize the water, the municipal water systems, and the poster says no to the payment of increasing bills, defense for the uses and customs of the water. Mainly it was a poster that was propaganda put up by a coordinator of the communities, and it was a march where people went into town and protested, and I think eventually they kicked out the company that was going to privatize the water, and I got what they wanted.
So this was fear of the community that they're going to lose their source of water and their ability to pay for it, huh?
The governor of Cochabamba entered into a deal to privatize the entire area's water systems. So similarly to the way that I built that me and the community built the water system out in San Miguel, there were smaller community water systems where people, communities had built their own water system and that kind of thing. And basically what went on was they were going to try to privatize this, so a community-owned water system would now be owned by a company that was called Aguas del Tunari, and which would in turn bill people for their water.
Tell me about the friends you made there, because one of my memories is some of the nights sitting around homes talking in the flickering lights about future. And even on those days I was still on duty. You're always looking for a way to sneak in one of your ideas. How do you have those kinds of memories?
I guess one of my best friends there was a guy named Ruben, and he lived next to the school. And the reason why I got along with him was because, unlike the teachers at the school, who were also some fairly good friends, but a lot of them would leave at night go back to the nearby town that was a little bit bigger. But Ruben, he was just always there. Could go talk to him, have meals with him. Whenever I came out, I used to bring him out some food, like a chicken or anything like that, if I were going to town. I don't know, he was laid back guy, had a good sense of humor. While I was there, I think his girlfriend, she had a baby, and so then there was the baby too that they were looking after, and it was just a great
A little family.
A little family. It was a great sense of community.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
The kids like it? The little kids like it?
yeah,
at
the
the school?
little kids. The
Hanging
kids
out?
were great.
Yeah.
Kids were great. You know, playing games with them. They would, you know, come around. If I were leaving or something, they would want to borrow all my games and that kind of stuff, so they could play while I was gone. And you know, used to do some stuff, try and do some classes and things like that. Some Spanish or some English classes, or even one of the things that I always tried to do, because it was like with no electricity and at a high altitude, you can see the stars really well down there. So I got a star book and used to get a flashlight and put a filter on there, and then just go out and look at the stars and try and figure out the constellations with the kids and the planets. And there were some other things, like one time I took a small group of kids camping up to, there was a large mountain. We were kind of at the base of this mountain, and took some kids up there. You know, they were, I don't know, it was a lot of fun.
Uh-huh. One of the things I can reassure you is you cannot begin to guess yet as to what influence you've had on people. Because I went back after 35 years to my home village and had a chance to meet most of the young men that very week, because there was a national election, so they all came back. And I had this chance to meet so many of these kids, including one young boy that I constantly told to read. I said, you're going to be president of the country someday. And he met me and back that last visit. He had a wonderful car and a nice family and good clothes, and his kids were in college in the capital city. I asked him what happened to him. He said he went on to high school that we helped build. We went on to first the grammar school that we built, then he went to high school and went on to the capital city. He's now a veterinarian. He's a doctor of veterinary sciences, and he's in charge of all the animals coming into the capital city through the airport. Well, I can't tell you what the transition is like from 4 miles by the Haitian border, from a young man who's the son of a former prostitute to now be the head of the veterinarian services at the airport. But those are the kinds of surprises I think you'll be in store, because you can't tell what sort of influence you had on those kids. But I'm sure you had a positive influence. What about the Bolivian people? They've had a new election. Our government's kind of hemming and hawing with their president, because maybe our government doesn't see the same points of view as the people. But what's in store for those people now?
Like you were saying, there was an election right as I was leaving, and there was some hopefuls. You know, it was a hopeful time for the people. But soon after the president was elected, he was ousted, and then his vice president took over. And then there was another election where this liberal leftist candidate took power. Evo Morales is his name, and I think people are hopeful. I think it's going to be a difficult time, because there's a wealthier region of Bolivia, which is in the east, the lower lands, where I think the general consensus is against the guy. So it could end up being a divided country.
Let's take 1 minute now and talk just your reactions to being back after a couple of years. Good times in the Peace Corps generally? Worthwhile?
I think it was a great time. I learned a lot, and got to see a part of the world and travel around all over South America, and never would have had that, you know, opportunity if I hadn't done it. I mean, who goes to South America these days?
Right.
And
so you benefited. How about the people? What do you think they got?
I think they got a lot. The projects that I did, I think, were helpful. One of my friends went back there, and he went out to my community, and he looked around. I asked him how the greenhouses were working, and he said that, you know, they're working great. And I asked him how about the water system, and he said the water system's still working. And so I think it's positive, as long as, you know, the projects that we do are carried out and sustainable and continued.
I'm sure you were successful, and I'm sure the people appreciate it. And like I said, also, I'm sure you'll be surprised in the years to come, if you do go back eventually, how much people will thank you for even the things you didn't think you were doing. And they'll talk about how positive that is. And I personally thank you as an old Peace Corps volunteer, because one of my goals and desires is that the Peace Corps continue, because I think it's an excellent way to have a comparison or a different type of foreign relationship with people, other than some of the more tragic things that we see happening on a regular basis. And it's a way of reaching out. And we need to learn from people just as much as they need to learn from us. So I thank you for keeping on up the tradition. Appreciate it a great deal. And I understand you're now an engineer out here, building big buildings and helping to
That's right.
create new kinds of houses. A little bit different than the block houses you made up in Bolivia. But
We're designing buildings to serve mankind. That's what we say anyway.
well, maybe if they put a couple of affordable units in there, maybe we'll agree more, but I'm sure they're appreciated by the people you build them. I'm sure you do a good job. Thank you very much for coming and being our guest, and for hitting all of those topics. We didn't get to talk about the 40 ways to eat corn and potatoes. Maybe next time we'll do that.
Okay.
So we may have gypped the culinary people, but we got everybody else on the list. So thank you very much for listening tonight, folks.